My name is Karen Leland. I was 17 years old when my father decided my future was not mine to have. No daughter of mine needs an education. He said it calmly, almost casually, and then he ripped my Penn State acceptance letter in half at the dinner table. Not folded, not crumpled, torn. Once, then again, until the page that had taken me 9 months of secret applications, late-night essays, and stolen lunch periods in my guidance counselor's office became 4 wet pieces of paper beside his mashed potatoes. My partial scholarship, my way out, my proof that I was more than the unpaid servant he had turned me into after my mother died. I thought that was the worst moment of my life. I was wrong. Because less than a minute later, my grandmother reached into her handbag and destroyed 20 years of my father's power with a single document he never knew existed. From the outside, our house on Maple Street looked like the kind of home people trusted. 2-story brick, white shutters, a lawn cut with military precision every Saturday morning at 7:15. My father, Gerald, liked people to see him working. He liked neighbors to think he was dependable, respectable, solid, the kind of man who held a family together. Inside, everything belonged to him, or so he said. His chair, his television, his rules, his dinner at 6 sharp. His thermostat set at 64 in the winter because anything warmer was wasteful. His salt shaker on his side of the table, his voice filling every room like a lock clicking shut. "This is my house, my rules." He said it so often it stopped sounding like a sentence and started sounding like weather, something permanent, something you survived. I was 10 the first time he handed me a spatula and told me to make breakfast. I burned the eggs. He didn't yell. He just stared at me with that quiet, flat look that somehow hurt worse than shouting and said, "Your mother could do this in her sleep. Figure it out." So I figured it out. Eggs, then pancakes, then full dinners, roast chicken, meatloaf, mashed potatoes the way he liked them, never lumpy, green beans with garlic. I did the laundry. Scrubbed the bathroom floor on my knees, packed my little brother Tyler's lunch every morning. Packed Gerald's, too, because apparently a grown man with a full-time plumbing job was incapable of making his own sandwich. I got Tyler to the bus stop, rushed to school, came home, cleaned, cooked, served, washed dishes by hand because Gerald said the dishwasher wasted water. And then did homework when the house finally went quiet. I wasn't his daughter. I was household labor with a first name. My mother, Diane, died when I was 8, breast cancer. By the time they found it, it had already spread. I don't remember everything about her, and that used to make me feel guilty, but I remember enough. Brown hair that curled at the ends without trying. A laugh that made you feel included before she'd even said your name. The smell of her hand lotion. The way she tucked blankets around me like she was sealing in safety. After the funeral, Gerald removed her from the house piece by piece. First, the photographs disappeared. Off the walls, off the mantel, off the refrigerator. He boxed them up and shoved them into the garage behind the snowblower. I stole one back, a little county fair snapshot of my mother holding me while cotton candy stuck to my chin. I kept it hidden inside my biology textbook for years. Then came the rules. No talking about Mom at the table. No crying where he could see it. No asking when things would feel normal again. When I was 12, I told him I wanted to be a nurse someday. He looked at me and said, "Your mother had dreams too. Look where that got her." He said it like he was commenting on the rain. I found out much later from my grandmother that my mother had once wanted to finish nursing school. Gerald had refused to let her go back. That was the first time I understood something I should have known years earlier. Silence in our family was never peace. It was compliance. By the time I was 17, my life ran on a schedule as rigid as prison routine. Alarm at 5:30. Coffee started at 5:45. Breakfast on the stove before 6. Tyler's lunch by 6:15. Gerald's lunch by 6:30, bus stop. School, home, chores, dinner, dishes, homework, bed, repeat. No clubs, no sports, no sleepovers, no after-school anything. "You've got responsibilities," Gerald liked to say. What he meant was that my life was useful to him exactly as it was. So when I applied to college, I did it in secret. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Hare, helped me. She noticed things teachers usually pretended not to notice. The way I flinched when men raised their voices, the way I never stayed after school. The way I rushed home, every afternoon like something terrible, would happen if I was late by even 10 minutes. One day she closed her office door and asked me, "Karen, what do you want your life to look like?" No one had ever asked me that before. I almost cried on the spot. She helped me find fee waivers, loaned me SAT prep books from her own shelf, read essay drafts during lunch, and let me use the school as a mailing address, because Gerald checked our mailbox like a prison guard doing rounds. But I also told my grandmother, Eleanor. She said, "Use my address too. I'll watch for anything important." Weeks later, she called me from her apartment. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the smile under it. "Penn State accepted you," she said. "Partial scholarship." I sat in Mrs. Hare's office and cried so hard I had to put my hand over my mouth to stay quiet. It still didn't feel real. Real things were fragile in our house. Gerald had a way of destroying them. What I didn't know then was that he had already made plans for me. He had contacted Rosie's Diner on Route 9 and arranged a waitressing job for me after graduation. 30 hours a week. He had even filled out the application himself and signed my name. He wasn't just saying no to college. He was laying track for the rest of my life and making sure it led nowhere. Sunday dinner was when everything broke. I remember every detail because trauma preserves strange things. The smell of rosemary on the chicken, the crescent-shaped water stain on the oak table. Tyler in his baseball jersey. Uncle Russell avoiding eye contact the way he always did when Gerald was in a good mood, because in our family, a good mood could turn faster than a bad one. My grandmother arriving in her camel cashmere coat and setting her dark brown handbag carefully beside her chair. Gerald was almost cheerful that night. That should have scared me more than it did. He thought he'd already won. I waited until everyone had food on their plates, until he had taken his first bite, until the room had settled into that usual tense quiet. Then I pulled the envelope from under my seat cushion and held it out. "Dad," I said, somehow keeping my voice steady, "I got into Penn State. I have a scholarship." He took the letter, read it. His face changed line by line, then he tore it apart. "No daughter of mine needs an education," he said. "You're staying here." The pieces fell onto his plate like garbage. I stared at them and felt something inside me collapse. All those essays, all that hope, all those stolen minutes in Mrs. Hare's office, gone with one motion of his hand. Then he leaned back and made it worse. "Your mother had the same stupid ideas," he said. "Wanted to go back to school, wanted to be a nurse, and where is she now?" The room went dead still. That was Gerald's favorite weapon. If he couldn't control you, he would use your grief against you until you mistook pain for obedience. I wanted to cry, but crying in front of him always felt like surrender, so I sat there with my hands in my lap and swallowed it whole. Then he looked at my grandmother. "This is your doing, isn't it?" he said, filling her head with nonsense, just like you did with Diane. My grandmother didn't answer. "Clear the table, Karen," he said to me. "This conversation is over." I stood automatically. Reflex, 9 years of training. My hand was reaching for his plate when my grandmother spoke. "Sit down, Karen." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Something in it froze the whole room. Gerald turned to her. "Ma, stay out of this. This is my house, my daughter, my decision." Uncle Russell shifted. "Gerald, maybe. You don't get a vote either." Then Gerald turned back to me, smug now, enjoying himself again. "And while we're at it," he said, "I already called Penn State on Thursday and tried to withdraw your acceptance. They said they needed your signature. So you're going to sign the withdrawal form tonight, right here, in front of everyone." That was the moment I understood he didn't just want to stop me. He wanted me to participate in my own destruction. My grandmother sat perfectly still. I counted the seconds without meaning to, the refrigerator humming, the clock ticking. Tyler staring at the torn letter like he could somehow piece it back together by looking hard enough. Gerald eating again, actually eating, as if the matter were settled. Then my grandmother set down her napkin. She folded it neatly, pushed back her chair, stood up. She walked to the coat closet, took out her cashmere coat, and put it on one arm at a time with slow, deliberate movements. Gerald frowned. "Where are you going?" "Dinner's not over." She came back to the table, stood behind her chair, and looked directly at him. "Pack her bags," he laughed, a real laugh, deep, confident, careless. "Pack her bags," he said. "And send her where?" My grandmother opened her handbag and removed a stack of papers. She laid them on the table between the plates. It was a deed, stamped, recorded, notarized, legally filed. And at the top, in clean black print, was one name: Eleanor M. Leland, my grandmother, not Gerald, not both of them, not a family trust, just her. "This house has been in my name since 2002, she said. "I bought it after your father died, with life insurance money and my savings. I let you live here because you were grieving and because your children needed stability. But I never signed this house over to you. Not once. There is no transfer." There never was. I will never forget Gerald's face. The smile didn't vanish all at once. It failed in stages, the corners of his mouth first, then his eyes. Then his posture, as if the chair beneath him had suddenly lost height. "You're joking," he said. "I am not." He pushed the paper back toward her. "So what? I've lived here 20 years. I paid the utilities, I fixed the roof, I replaced the furnace, I maintained this property." My grandmother didn't blink. "I'm giving you a choice," she said. "Karen goes to Penn State this fall with my financial support, and you continue living here. Or you fight me, and I call my attorney tonight." He looked around the table like somebody would save him. Uncle Russell picked up the deed, read it, and went pale. Tyler's mouth was slightly open. I just sat there, stunned by the simplest truth of all. For 20 years, Gerald had ruled that house like a king in a castle he didn't own. He tried guilt next. That was always his second move when force stopped working. "You really want to tear this family apart over a school?" he asked me. Family. He said it like it meant loyalty to him. My grandmother reached into her handbag again, pulled out her flip phone, and pressed a speed dial button. "Hello, David," she said when the call connected. "It's Eleanor Leland. I need you to begin the process we discussed. Yes, tonight." She listened for a moment, thanked him, and ended the call. Then she looked at Gerald and said, "You have 30 days. Or you let Karen go to college, choose." He tried one last command. "Sit down," he barked at me as I stood. I didn't. He stood too, one hand flat on the table. "You are not going anywhere." I looked him in the eye for what felt like the first time in my life. "I've been sitting down for 9 years, I said. "I'm done." I went upstairs and grabbed the backpack I had kept half-packed for months because Mrs. Hare had once told me quietly, "If you ever get a chance to leave, don't waste time deciding what to take." Clothes, toothbrush, SAT book, journal, the photo of my mother from the biology textbook. Tyler was standing in the hallway when I came out. He looked terrified. "I'm not leaving you," I whispered, pulling him into a hug. "I'm leaving this." When I came downstairs, Gerald was by the front door. "If you walk out," he said, voice shaking now, "don't come back." I walked past him. He didn't stop me. Outside, my grandmother had the car running and the passenger door open. I got in with my backpack on my lap. As we pulled away, I didn't look back at the house on Maple Street. I only watched it in the side mirror until it became smaller than the life I had almost lost inside it. My grandmother's apartment was small. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. A kitchen window overlooking the parking lot of a laundromat. It smelled like lavender, lemon dish soap, and something I eventually realized was safety. That night she gave me the bed and took the couch. I lay awake in the dark listening to Gerald's voice echo around my skull. "You're selfish. You ruined this family. You'll never make it without me." That's the ugly part no one talks about. You can leave a house in one night. It takes much longer to get someone's voice out of your bones. My grandmother came in carrying warm milk and sat on the edge of the bed. After a long silence, she said, "Your mother would be proud of you tonight." That was what finally broke me. Not the torn letter, Not the threat, not even the years, those 8 words. I cried the way I hadn't cried since I was 8 years old. Loud, ugly, helpless. She held my hand until I was done, and then she told me something I never expected. She had opened a savings account in my name when I was 10, $200 a month from her teacher's pension. Every month for 7 years. There's enough for your first year, she said. With your scholarship, you'll be fine. I stared at her. Why didn't you do this sooner? She looked down at her hands for a long time. Because I kept hoping he'd change, she said. That was my mistake. Gerald began calling the next morning. First soft, then angry, then cruel. Come home, sweetheart. We can talk. Then you're making a fool of yourself. Then if you don't come back by Friday, you'll have nothing. He showed up at my school demanding to see me. Mrs. Hare moved me through the back hallway and kept me in her office until he left. He posted on Facebook that I had run away because my grandmother was manipulating me. People from town commented that they were praying for him. Classmates repeated rumors in the hall like they were passing notes in church. In a small town, truth travels on foot. Lies take a truck. Then Monday morning, the legal notice arrived. A process server handed Gerald a formal 30-day notice to quit the property at 114 Maple Street. He called my grandmother screaming. She put him on speaker while I ate cereal at her kitchen table. You can't do this to your own son. I gave you a choice, she said, looking out the window. You made it. Then she hung up. He tried lawyers. One declined. Another reviewed the deed and told him exactly what he didn't want to hear. If the property was in her name and there was no lease, he had no ownership claim worth anything in court. That same week, Tyler called me from a friend's phone. Dad hasn't cooked once since you left, he whispered. He doesn't know where the plates are. A few days later, my grandmother told me the full truth. Her husband, my grandfather, had controlled her much the same way Gerald controlled us. She had wanted to teach long before she ever got her own classroom, but she had been told a wife belonged at home. She didn't start teaching until she was 51 years old. When I saw Gerald doing it to your mother, she said quietly, I knew exactly what I was looking at. The house had always been her insurance policy against disaster. She bought it after my grandfather died. She never transferred the deed because some part of her, even then, knew she might need it one day. She had been right. Then Tyler found something. He got into Gerald's locked desk drawer and discovered a manila folder full of college mail addressed to me, letters from other schools, scholarship information, my SAT score report. Everything intercepted, opened, hidden. My father hadn't crushed my future in one act of rage. He had been dismantling it methodically for months. At the bottom of the folder, Tyler found something else. A card from my Aunt Patricia in Philadelphia, mailed years earlier. Gerald had told me my mother's sister wanted nothing to do with us. That was a lie too. She had been writing. He had been hiding her from us. By then I wasn't shocked anymore, just colder. Gerald refused to leave when the 30 days were up, so my grandmother filed for formal eviction. The hearing took place in a small district courtroom with wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lights, and benches full of people who had already heard 10 different versions of our story. Gerald came dressed like respectability, pressed shirt, khakis, boots polished as much as work boots can be polished. My grandmother came dressed like truth, navy blazer, white blouse. Her back straight as a ruler. His lawyer talked about sweat equity, verbal understandings, implied promises. He tried to turn occupancy into ownership and entitlement into law. My grandmother's lawyer laid down the deed, the tax records, the title search, and 22 years of paper evidence. Then the judge asked Gerald the question that ended him. Do you have any written document showing that your mother agreed to transfer ownership of this property to you? He said. It was understood. The judge replied, this court deals in documents. Not assumptions. Eviction granted. 15 days to vacate. Gerald shot to his feet and shouted, this is insane. She's doing this because of a girl who wants to go to school. And there it was, not hidden, not polished. Not explained away. A girl who wants to go to school. That was the threat, according to him. That was what made him feel wronged. Outside the courthouse, he stood beside his truck and said to my grandmother, "You took everything from me." She looked at him for a long moment and answered, "I didn't take anything. I just stopped giving." He moved out 8 days before the deadline. My grandmother kept the house and rented it to a young family. The rent went into an account for my education. Tyler moved in with Uncle Russell for a while and joined the track team, the first extracurricular activity any child in our family had been allowed in years. Aunt Patricia called me, and when I heard her voice for the first time, warm and wrecked with love, I understood how much of my life had been hidden from me. Before I left for Penn State orientation, my grandmother gave me a letter my mother had written during treatment. On the front of the envelope, in her careful handwriting, were the words, "For Karen, when she's ready to fly." Inside, my mother didn't write about dying. She didn't write about fear. She wrote about me: burnt toast I made her when I was 7, constellations I memorized from a diner placemat, the sound of my laugh. At the end, in shakier handwriting, she wrote, "Don't let anyone tell you what you're worth, especially not the people who are supposed to love you." I read that line 3 times. The first time I cried. The second time I understood it. The third time I believed it. Penn State in the fall looked like another planet to me, trees on fire with orange leaves. Students carrying books and coffee like they had every right in the world to be there. No one asking where I was going. No one checking the mailbox. No one turning my future into a punishment. I kept 2 things on my dorm desk: the county fair photo of my mother and her letter in a plastic sleeve so the ink wouldn't fade. 2 months into my first semester, Gerald called. "I saw you made the dean's list," he said. His voice was smaller than I had ever heard it. "Your mother would have liked that." It was the first decent thing he had ever said to me about my future. It wasn't enough to erase anything. It wasn't enough to rebuild what he had spent years breaking. But it was the first crack in the story he'd been telling himself. I thanked him. Then I told him I wasn't ready to talk. After I hung up, I sat in the silence of my dorm room and realized something I had never known how to name before. He did not lose me when I walked out the door. He lost me the moment he decided my life was his to shrink, and I was finally far enough away to grow. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what you would have done at that dinner table. And if you've ever had to fight for your future against the people who were supposed to support you, I want to hear your story too.